wanted the Texas Boxing Commission to fix the ring, to fix the judges for him. He wanted Eddie, in my opinion, not only to make it a level playing field, but a playing field in his favour. He was demanding a lot of stuff. The bigger problem is the little that he demanded from himself throughout his career. This man turned pro 2009, and in 2020 he still wasn't ready to fight Canelo. He whinged about not getting enough time to train, and they're not going to use me like they've used all the other fighters. But Canelo wanted to be undisputed champion, so the shot came back round to him this year. And Billy should be grateful for that. He should be. Now, I've heard people say recently, if fighters complain about the conditions like the judges in the ring, etc., then the fans complain that the fighters shouldn't complain. And if they don't complain and they lose, and then say, well, yeah, I should have been more vocal about the judges and the ring, etc., then the fans complain that they're making excuses. Which one is it? Well, it's not that simple as you're saying it. Nobody's saying that Team Saunders should not look out for these things. But it's up to MTK, the great MTK that Billy holds up in such esteem, to go sort that out. And Billy should be focusing on the fight. That's what he should have been doing. The task was big enough as it is without Billy trying to do managerial work. He shouldn't have been doing it. And that's what a lot of people are not understanding. You've got Tyson Fury on video, on social media, talking a load of shit, and his dad probably winding Billy up and bringing more anxiety to Billy. No. Daniel Kinahan, his management, and MTK should have handled whatever they had to handle in a professional way. Preferably before contracts are signed. Get all this sorted out. I actually believe now even Eddie Hearn's harshest critics are not going to allow Billy or his dad to lay the blame on Eddie's door why he lost his fight. That's what I'm seeing right now. Canelo will get found out eventually at these higher weight classes. But it may be too late. He may retire by then. Let's see what fighter can take away the uppercut. You do that, and then you begin disarming him weapon by weapon. He's not even using a lot of volume to beat these bigger guys than him. He's walking them down in this kind of crab construct, side to side with his hands up, and coming up with hooks and uppercuts. Mike Tyson used to use that right hand to the body and that uppercut, two of his big weapons against the bigger guys, and it took them years to suss it out. Years. They were so in awe of Mike that it just took years. Try not to fall in if you come up short with your punches, and even if you do connect, try not to fall in, because some fighters will just come back immediately whether they've been hit or not with that counter. It's not easy. But Canelo has such belief in his abilities right now, it might be too late for any of the 168-pounders to take him on. Like Caleb. If Caleb gets the shot, which I don't think Caleb's going to take the fight, because he has no fights on deck that prepares him for Canelo. What fights does he have? He hasn't fought Charlo. He didn't fight Benavidez. He didn't take all these fights. Just not ready. It's as simple as that. So, you know, when people get mad at people like me when I point these things out, I don't really care, because I just don't respect your boxing knowledge. You think these guys can take these fights without the preparation fights beforehand. Now, maybe in a one-off, you can get one off. But I guarantee you, you're not going to go on to be no dominant champion. You just don't have the foundation behind you. You don't have it. I predicted Canelo to win on points, perhaps stoppage. But even if Billy did pull it off, it's a one-off. Not saying it's lucky. There's a difference between luck and a one-off. Well, the difference for me, I don't really deal with lucky wins and lucky punches. So we can write luck out. But it's a one-off performance. Here's why I say that, right? If Canelo wins, he goes on to fight Caleb Plant, then he goes on to fight Benavidez, and he goes on to take significant fights. If Billy won the fight, who's to say that he gets the Caleb Plant fight over the line in 6 months or even a year? Or if he doesn't go off on a binge and blow up to 180 pounds or something like that. We can't rely on Billy. The consistency ain't there. These guys, like, I'm not going to say any particular promotional company, they seem to believe that you can avoid all these cross-promotional fights, all these career-defining fights, and then go on to have a great legacy. No, it's not going to happen. You know, like Errol Spence, for instance. They're talking about Errol Spence and Canelo. So you haven't even cleaned out Terence Crawford. People are constantly sniping at you, and you know they're sniping at you. Fight Terence Crawford at 147. You haven't did that, And you want to fight Canelo at 168? You haven't even fought a top-ranked 154 pounder, 160 pounder, 168. You haven't cleaned out 147. And you're talking about fighting at 168? This is just the delusion of boxing these days. Just, I don't know where it's heading. Let me tell you this, right? Errol Spence needs to be sparring heavyweights to fight Canelo, because that's what he does. You're going to have to get into Canelo's world to have even a chance of going the distance, let alone winning. Could Errol Spence beat Rocky Fielding or Callum Smith? I'm not a Canelo fan, and I don't like defending him, but because people are very irrational in boxing, Canelo is the first stop at who they critique in boxing for not doing it right in terms of level of opposition faced. And there's no way it should be Canelo. There's no way it should be Canelo. You can't tell him to do this and that with Caleb Plant, and Caleb Plant hasn't fought Benavidez or Charlo. You can't tell him that. That's bang out of order. The only reason guys like Caleb and Billy and Callum are getting the fights is because they've got straps. It's not because they've done anything in particular in boxing, but that will go for many of the other weight classes at 160. Charlo ain't done nothing. Andrade ain't done nothing. Now, if he was to go back down to 154, I'd give the younger Charlo a little leverage because he's achieved in his weight class. I'll give him his props. I'll give him his due. I ain't got no problem with that. But as for the rest of them, keep your mouth closed. Like Terence Crawford. Canelo doesn't fight black fighters, but you're the one who won't join the PBC. If fighting black fighters is such a priority to Terence Crawford, just join the PBC like Spence said. You get all the black fighters to fight at your disposal at 147. Because if Terence is saying that, you know, for Canelo to be considered a great fighter, he's got to fight black fighters, well, that means the same for Terence as well. Go join the PBC. Or just do what he's doing now, take your free $4 million for whatever welterweights Bob can find you, and take your money. Because Terence's strongest argument for credibility is people saying that Spence won't fight him with the this side of the street nonsense. That's Terence's biggest argument. Yeah? But if he's going to start critiquing fighters like Canelo with the resume he has, he's going to find himself in trouble. If Canelo has to sacrifice to fight black fighters, well, so do you. Go across the other side of the street. Let's see what he does in October. Because we was expecting some big news to be announced for some big fight. What's happened to that? And we're hearing that too much in his career. I'm a fan, Terence Crawford fan, but there's only so much damage control I can do. Or I'm prepared to do. The top rank contract runs out in October. We'll see what he does. Bomac said he's going to fight twice this year. Well, it's May already. You better get a move on it if you're going to have 2 fights this year. Like Eddie, he hasn't got no more 168 pounders to feed Canelo. Is he out the loop now? And look, just going to say it off the bat. Eddie going in to the PBC to negotiate the Caleb Plant deal is just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I doubt they take the fight anyway, but if Eddie's included in the deal, no. And if the PBC think they're going to be signing Canelo, no, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening on anything more than a fight-to-fight basis. No, I don't see it. From where I'm standing, if Al Heyman doesn't do all he can to make that fight, I can't really see the purpose of them being in boxing, really. I really can't see it. Canelo's running right now, you know. And for me, it's hard to listen to anybody when I see he's got 3 belts in one weight class, and you can say, oh, it's a weak gene pool of 168 pounders. You can say that. But when you see the man has 3 belts in the weight class, just done a 70,000 crowd, is getting paid more than anyone else has done this year, and you're saying he has to do what to accommodate what fighter? No, they have to accommodate him. Ideally, Benavidez and Plant should have fought to see who was the better qualified. I mean, because what we have now with Plant is someone we're expecting to fold up because he's fought no one of any consequence to make us believe any otherwise. Charlo was supposed to fight Benavidez. Then he seemed to get really scared. I'm talking about this 160-pound one. Seemed to get really scared. Where does he have to do any more than what he's doing, Canelo? He should fight Beterbiev. Spence should fight Crawford. Charlo should fight Benavidez. Plant should fight Benavidez. You can't pick on Canelo because he's on top. That's not right. He's playing the same game all the other fighters are playing. He's just better at it than they are. Andrade, I didn't like the way they were handling him on Saturday, to be honest. I didn't like it, but it is what it is. He doesn't have no grounds to call Canelo at 168. If Canelo weren't going to fight you at 160 when there was something at stake, when they both had belts in that weight class, he's not going to fight you at 168. You have nothing for him. Now, when Canelo said he was boring at 160 a few years back, didn't agree with that at all. It was some nonsense. Should have fought him. That would have brought Canelo closer to the 4 belts. Would have brought Andrade closer to the 4 belts potentially. I didn't like that, but right now, Andrade just got to get in and grind.
I told you, man. I told you.
I was telling a lot of people from a long time ago about Michael Hunter that he's not who the cult following he suddenly developed, that he's not who you're saying he is. He never was. A good fighter, a world-ranked fighter. But, you know, there became a bunch of sympathizers after his tenure at Matchroom ended. And a lot of people thought it was unfair that he was dropped by Matchroom. And perhaps it was. But that sympathy went to another level where they were saying Michael Hunter is the only throwback fighter who will fight anybody, anytime, anywhere, any place. And now we're finding out it's not true. And I told everybody that Mike's going to let you down. Mike can only work in the environment where he's working in. He can't do anything beyond that. He can't pretend that he's fighting in the 40s, even if he wanted to, or the 50s, as a black fighter. Certain things should be easy to work out. Like, towards the end of Floyd's career, there was a lot of black brothers, African Americans, who really disliked Floyd. Didn't like the career path he took. But they all became big fans of Keith Thurman, saying, oh, he's going to do it totally different from Floyd. And I would ask them, I said, well, okay, if Floyd is being advised by Al Heyman, and Keith Thurman is being advised by Al Heyman, are they going to get similar career advice? What's making you think that Al Heyman is going to make it harder for Keith Thurman than he did for Floyd, if you're unsatisfied with what Floyd did? And they couldn't see that. And it's kind of like with Michael Hunter, like, if he's being advised by Al Heyman, what makes you think he's going to try and be Lloyd Marshall or Archie Moore and, you know, wait years and years for no title shot, or years and years in Archie Moore's case, just to get a shot? What makes you think he's going to take all these type of risks? If you look at the company that people keep, it should often tell you what move they're potentially going to make. It's not a science that is 100% all the time, but it's as good a guide you can to reading people as you're going to get. The boxer who takes short notice fights in other people's backyards when he's disadvantaged, will do so out of necessity until he can get himself in a better situation where he doesn't have to do that. You know, you have to realize with Mike Hunter, his dad was a gatekeeper in the 80s and the 90s. And he had to do all that, fighting another man's turf, late notice fights, get decisions that go against him. What makes you think Mike, of all people, is going to stay in that situation and not play risk-reward? And I told everyone, all what I'm saying is stuff that I said already. Just repeating myself right now. You can't really play throwback fighter in 2020. You can't really play that. There's too much bureaucracy. It takes too long to put fights together. Fighters don't fight as frequently. That's a period in boxing that's gone by now. You know, I mean, Canelo tying up 2 belts in such a short time period and having 3 fights between when did he fight Callum Smith? That's old school boxing to me. No one else is doing it. Once again, that's another thing he's doing that no one else is doing. But yet you want to talk about Canelo has to do more than any other boxer out there? It really doesn't make sense at this stage here. And I'm not a Canelo fan. Never have been. But I can't just sit back and hear what people are saying, that he needs to do more than other fighters out there. I can't really listen to that. Can't listen to that. Doesn't make any sense. You know, all you can talk about is Andrade's skill set and hypothetically tell us how you think he'd do against Canelo. But he has a similar record to Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders. And the names on the resume are not dissimilar in terms of levels, right? So when Canelo's beat Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders, both undefeated, with title belts, you can't be telling me he has to prioritize Andrade. You can't really, because Andrade hasn't had no standout fights yet. Do I think he could beat Billy Joe Saunders Andrade? Yeah, I probably do. At 168, could he beat Callum Smith? I don't know. I haven't seen him fight at that weight class. But you show me the other fighters who are beating undefeated fighters, unifying belts in such a short proximity as Canelo. Show me. Who are they? Where? Now he's looking to take on another unbeaten fighter in that weight class to top all 4 belts. And if you're just going to use the black argument for Andrade, it's a bit lame. It's a bit lame. Now, you can argue that 168 ain't that strong, but 175 is not that strong. I would say it's probably a jump too far for Canelo to try and top all the belts there, perhaps, because they may be just too big. And listen, in this era here, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. In eras gone by, no. But that's fair enough right now by today's standards, that he doesn't want to get knocked out by some 175 pounder who's going to come in as a cruiserweight. That's fair enough in these days' standards. Can't hold that against him. No one else would do it. People always big up Roy Jones for fighting John Ruiz. He didn't fight Lennox Lewis. So if you're going to say that Canelo cherry-picked Kovalev and didn't fight Beterbiev, well, that's no different to what Roy did. No different. When the Mike Tyson fight was lined up for Roy back then, I'm going back down to light heavy. And when they were trying to make tour mandatory and stuff like that, he wasn't signing up for it. And 2003 is modern day standards. It might be a little old school for some of you new jacks here. Anyway, as for Mike Hunter, for backing out of the Hrgovic eliminator, the IBF threw him out of the top 10. And rightly so. Rightly so. As Callie Salem said in the interview, unless he's walking into a Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua fight, there are no bigger fights for him than an eliminator with Hrgovic. There are no bigger fights. Unless he's going to fight Deontay Wilder at the PBC, he has no bigger options outside Hrgovic. Him versus Andy Ruiz is not pay-per-view worthy. Or Kawanaki. Or Charles Martin. None of these are pay-per-view fights at the PBC. So, it's not like he's left the Hrgovic situation for a better one. No. He just ducked the fight, basically. Because of risk-reward. And this is what I was telling everybody in them hangouts. Michael Hunter is going to play risk-reward like most fighters do in the construct or constraints of what a professional fighter can do in America. Yeah? And I'm not saying he alone decided, but Team Hunter decided 360,000 grand, right? Even though he's not worth any more than that. Let me tell you one thing about a purse bid. A purse bid will tell you exactly what you're worth. Because it's not like there was multiple offers to take the purse bid like there was for Teofimo Lopez against Kambosos, an unknown Australian. No. The pay-per-view told him exactly what he was worth, 360,000. And either Callie or Eddie, or maybe both of them, because they both have a piece of Hrgovic, that's what they bid. No one in America bid any higher for Michael than that. So the total purse bid was won at 600,000. Hunter would have got 350,000 out of that because he was ranked higher than Hrgovic. But they said to themselves that 360,000 to fight this guy who is a knockout puncher. Michael tried to say, don't try and build this guy as any big puncher. Michael's threatened by this guy from a long time ago. He's a big puncher. He's not 40 years of age like Alexander Povetkin. And Michael's team decided, no. He's younger than Michael. He's got amateur pedigree. The risk reward said no. There's no belt on the line. I think Mike would fight him if there was a belt on the line. But they said no. Exactly how I told everyone how it was going to go. Word for word, bar for bar. Literally is how it went.
Does that make me crazy?
Now, in the You Must Be Crazy section this week is KIERON Conway. Take it away, KIERON.
Yeah, I got off to a slow start. He had a fast jab early on, and he was beating me to the punch early on. But he was very negative, made it hard to engage. He didn't want to engage for the whole fight. And I was there. I wanted to put on a good show. I wanted to entertain. I wanted to have a fight. He didn't want none of that. He just wanted to win on the jab.
Stop. I just wanted to entertain and put on a good fight. No, you wanted to win, motherfucker. You're saying all that shit now that you wanted to entertain and put on a good fight because you was out-skilled. You wanted to win, but you didn't have the skills to compete with Sissoko. So let's stop lying. Now, Sissoko is not a crash and bang merchant. But when you get pure boxing as good as that, you have to appreciate it. And to me, I wasn't like, I wish he could be more like Gatti and Mickey Ward. Nah, I was appreciating the skills. And watching KIERON Conway unable to deal with the skill set. And apart from the knockdown, which I actually scored 10-9 to Conway, not 10-8. I scored it 10-9 because I still think Sissoko came back with the better shots later in the round. He was outclassed, talking absolute nonsense about he was negative. Absolute nonsense. Talking about he wanted to have a tear-up Well, to have a tear-up in a boxing match is not always an option. You have to know how to open up your opponents and cut down a ring. They don't stand in front of you and allow you to use all your weapons and do what you're good at. What kind of nut job would make observations like that? Kieron had a size advantage, a considerable size advantage. You didn't know how to use it, and you wanted your smaller opponent to brawl with you. And he's acting like the guy just ran and ran. No, he landed enough solid right hands behind that jab all night. Jabs and right hands, straight rights and straight lefts and 1-2s. That's what I saw. Now, whether Sissoko can go up another level and do that to the top guys at 154, I have my doubts. He looks too small to me. Trained by Virgil Hunter, he looks smooth. Like I said on Twitter, smooth to the groove like butter.
Does that make me crazy?